Om Akhandamandalakaram Vyaptam Yena Characharam Tatpadam Darshitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhaktarupaswarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakhyam Namami Bhaktashaktikam Namah Pankajanabhaya Namah Pankajamalini Namah Pankajanetraya Namaste Pankajangraye Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya Cha Nandagopakumaraya Govindaya Namo Namaha Namo Brahmanya Devaya Gobrahmana Hitaya Cha Jagadhitaya Krishnaya Govindaya Namo Namaha Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsachanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum. Sarvebhyo Namaha. Sarvesham Krite Swagatam Atra. Gata Kakshasu Asmavihi Srimad Bhagavad-gitayaha Ashtamadhyaye Prathama Shlokat Arabhya Dashama Shloka Paryantam Dasha Shlokaha Patitaha Adyadanayam Kakshayam Vayam Ekadasha Shlokat Arabhya Trayodasha Shloka Paryantam Shlokatrayam Kurma Patamaha. So in the previous sessions, we have studied the first 10 shlokas of the 8th chapter. And today we will do the next 3 shlokas, shlokas 11 to 13. But before I go to the 11th shloka, I'll do a quick recap of the 3 shlokas we did in the last session, shlokas 8 to 10. What has happened in the first 10 shlokas is that Sri Bhagavan is answering a question asked by Arjuna. In the beginning of the 8th chapter, Arjuna asks 7 questions. And the 7th question is, Prayana kalecha katham nyeyosi niyatatmabhihi. At the time of leaving the body, the time of death, how can one remember you, O Krishna? Arjuna is asking this to Krishna. So in answer to that, Sri Bhagavan says, Anta kalecha mameva smaranna muktva kalevaram yaf prayati tyajandeham sayati paramamgatam. At the point of death, one who leaves their body thinking about me, they attain me. Okay, then he says, generally speaking, whatever you think about at the time of death, that is what you attain. And in that same shloka, he also makes a point that what we think of at the time of death is a function or is determined by, is an outcome of what we have been thinking of throughout our life. It is not that we can do whatever we want or think of whatever we want throughout our life, but we can decide to think of him at the point of death. So we can save that memory about him only for death. That's not possible. So he says in the next shloka, Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu mamanusmara yudhyacha. This is the 7th shloka of the 8th chapter of Bhagavad-gita. Says that, therefore, at all times, think about me and do your work. Mamanusmara yudhyacha. Mai arpita mano buddhihi mameva eshyasi asamshayaha. With your mind and intelligence devoted to me, you will surely attain me. There is no doubt about that. Okay, so this is what he has advised Arjuna in the 7th shloka. And then in the 8th to 10th shloka, he's giving Arjuna and through him to us the concept of yoga mishra bhakti. When somebody is practicing Ashtanga yoga as a means to practice bhakti or as a support for bhakti. So they practice bhakti with Shraddha in Ashtanga yoga, and through that they meditate upon Sri Bhagavan. Okay, so the 8th shloka of the 8th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Abhyasa yoga yuktena chetasa nanyagamina paramam purusham divyam yati parthanu chintayan. Then he says, Kavim puranam anushasitaram anoraniyam samanusmaredhyah sarvasya dhataram achintya rupam aditya varnam tamasah parastat. Prayana kale Manasachalena bhaktya yukto yoga balena chaiva bhruvor madhye pranamaveshya samyak satam param purushamupaiti divyam. He says that by the practice of repetition, by repeated practice, if one is able to fix their mind, which is unwavering, na anya gamina, undistracted mind, upon that supreme person. Who is that supreme person? That is me, Krishna. Krishna is speaking this. He's speaking about himself. So sometimes he refers to himself in third person, sometimes in first person. Says somebody is able to contemplate upon that supreme person through repeated practice. And how should one do that? One should think about him in these manners as one without a beginning. Kavi, Puranam, one who is the oldest, one who has no creation, one who is the all-knowing one, Kavim, one who is Anushasita. Anushasitra means one who directs, one who instructs. Anoho Aniyamsam, one who is smaller than the smallest. Okay, and Sarvasya Thataram, one who is the bearer of everything. Achintya Rupam, one whose form or nature cannot be understood merely by Pratyaksha Praman or by Anumana Praman, by logical reasoning or by sense perception. It is understood on the basis of Shastra, Shabda Praman. Aditya Varnam, who is self-effulgent like the sun, who does not need something else to illuminate him. He illuminates himself and he illuminates others also. So to understand him, it's enough if we depend upon him, he will reveal himself. So in this manner, we have to think about him. As we do Ashtanga Yoga and do Dharana, Dhyana, and try to meditate upon him, this is how we should think about him. So he's giving us the characteristics by which we can think about him. And situating our mind in bhakti, keeping Dhruvor Madhye Pranam Aveshya Sammak, keeping our prana in the middle of the eyebrows. That's called the Ajna Chakra. Among the different chakras in the terminology of yoga, Patanjali Yoga, this is called the Ajna Chakra here. So keeping the prana on the Ajna Chakra or at the Ajna Chakra, if one leaves the body, thinking about Sri Bhagavan in this manner, then one will definitely attain Sri Bhagavan. That was the 10th shloka. So now, these 3 shlokas took us into Yoga Mishra Bhakti. The next 3 shlokas, they further elaborate on aspects of Yoga Mishra Bhakti. The 11th shloka is as follows. Yadaksharam Veda Vido Vadanti Vishanti Yadyatayo Vitaragaha Yadichanto Brahmacharyam Charanti Tatte Padam Sangrahena Pravakshe. So here he goes into some of the finer details. He talks about the Akshara Brahman or the Om. Om is called the Aksharam or Akshara Brahman. We'll read what this means. I'll read Baladeva's commentary, Baladeva's Vyakhya, which is more elaborate, slightly more elaborate than Sri Vishwanath Chakravarti's Vyakhya. Baladeva says, Nanu Bhruvor Madhye Pranam Aveshya Etavata Yogo Na Avagamyate. Says in the 10th shloka, you told me that I should keep my prana in the middle of the eyebrows, but just by saying that, I'm not able to fully understand what exactly I should do. Tasmat tasya prakaram tatra japyam prapyam bruhi. So tell me, what exactly should I do japa of? What exactly should I chant? What exactly should I think of? Tell me in some more detail. Ityapekshayam. Anticipating this question from Arjuna, Krishna is speaking this shloka, the 11th shloka. Ityapekshayamaha yadaksharamiti tribihi. He speaks this in 3 shlokas, and the 3 shlokas we are going to do today. Ekameva Brahma Dvirupam. There is only one Brahma, that supreme being called Brahma. Sri Bhagavan is also labeled as Brahma. In English, we write it as Brahman, because in Sanskrit, the root word, the Pratipadika Rupam, or the base word in Sanskrit is Brahman, Nakaranta Shabda. That in the Prathama Vibhakti Ekavachanam becomes Brahma. So we say Brahma when we talk about it, but in writing in English, we write Brahman. Ekameva Brahma Dvirupam. That same one Brahma is understood in 2 ways. Vachakam Vachyam Chaiti Sthitham. Vachaka Vachya. Vachaka means that which describes. Vachya means that which is described. The describer and the described. Okay, so Vachakam Vachyam. So what is the difference between the two? How are the two both indicated in this shloka? Tatra Veda Vido yat Brahma aksharam om iti vachakam vadanti. So the people who study the Veda, the people who are panditas in the Veda, who study and they recite the Veda, they refer to this syllable called Om as the all-encompassing reality, as that supreme being, that Brahman. Okay, so Om is the Vachaka Brahman. Om is nothing but a form of Sri Bhagavan himself. Bhagavan manifests as Om, and Brahma manifests as Om, and becomes his own describer. Om describes Bhagavan. Om is Bhagavan himself who describes Bhagavan. Okay, so Om is Bhagavan's descriptor as well as Bhagavan himself. So this is Vachaka Brahma. Om is Vachaka Brahma. Vachakam vadanti. Vita ragaha vinashta avidyaha yatayaha yat Brahma tad vachya bhutam vijnanaika rasam vishanti prapnuvanti. So those who actually practice, those who study the Vedas, they talk about Om in that manner and they chant Om. For them, Om is a very dominant thing in their recitation of the Veda. The others, those who are actually practicing and trying to become perfect, Vita ragaha, those who have given up their attachment to all material things and are trying to make spiritual progress, vinashta avidyaha, those whose avidya or ignorance has been destroyed. Okay, such people, yatayaha, yatihi means a practitioner, a serious, a sincere practitioner. A sannyasi who's practicing very seriously is also called a yati. Yatayaha, yat Brahma, which they are trying to achieve is that Bhagavan. Okay, so this is the Vachakam Brahma. So this shloka is mentioning both. Yadaksharam Veda Vido Vadanti, yatayo Vitaragaha Vishanti. Vishanti yat Vitaragaha. So that which these practitioners actually want to attain, or they attain, eventually they attain that Brahma. So in that first line of this shloka, both are given. Prapnuvanti. That Ubhaya Rupam Brahma is both forms of Brahma, Gyatum Icchantaha. So the people who want to know both these forms of Brahma, Naishtikaha Gurukula Vasadi Lakshanam Brahmacharyam Charanti. So those who want to know that Brahma very seriously, they practice Brahmacharya. Brahmacharya means celibacy. Okay, so one is, Brahmacharya is considered an ashrama among the four ashramas, Brahmachari, Grihastha, Vanaprastha and Sannyas. The first ashrama is Brahmacharya. So during Brahmacharya, a person takes care not to indulge in anything which goes against their celibacy, protect their celibacy. So they focus fully on their study and developing their mind in a proper manner so that they can then eventually strengthen it and prepare it for meditation on Bhagavan. So desiring to attain that Brahman, these people, they practice Brahmacharya. And where do they practice? Gurukula Vasadi Lakshanam. They study under the Guru. They stay in the Gurukula with the Guru. And then they practice. And then they learn and they practice Brahmacharya. Tat Padam. That goal. Padam means what? Prapyam. That which is to be attained. Prapyam. Sangrahena upayena saha pravakshe. Vakshyami. I will tell you, Sangrahena. Sangrahena means Sangraha. The word Sangraha stands for, here he explains here, see, Samyak Grihyate. Samyak Grihyate Tattva Manena iti Niruktehe. Niruktihi in Sanskrit means etymology. Etymology means to understand how a word has been derived. The derivation of a word is called its etymology. In English also there is a study of etymology. For example, how did that word originate? Where did that word come from? Okay, that study, the study of how the word originated, why that word is in the current form. That's called etymology. In the study of Sanskrit, etymology is much more developed. So for every word, the scholars try to identify how did this word, from which root, verbal root, did it come? And what forms the verb was transformed into before it became this word. And knowing the etymology, one tries to make sense of the word. One tries to understand how the word is used in that context. So here, he is giving us the etymology of Sangraha. Sangraha means Samyak Grihyate Anena, by which one can comprehensively grasp something. Samyak Grihyate. Samyak means comprehensively or thoroughly, completely. Grasp something. Here something means the meaning of this shloka or the meaning of this process of yoga. The process of yoga, how to do the process of yoga. Sangrahena pravakshe, he says, I will explain to you in a manner that you can comprehensively understand. Okay, sangrahena means that. Samyak grihyate, by which you can easily understand. Upayena. Upayena means by the means by which you can understand. Upaya means means. Means by which you can understand the process of yoga, the process of thinking about him. I will now explain to you. Yatha anayasena. Anayasena means easily, without ayas. Anayasena tvam tad vidyam prapnuyaha, by which you can get that knowledge. Okay, so this is the shloka. Let's go back to the original shloka. Yad aksharam veda vido vadanti. That aksharam, that om, which the people who recite the Veda, they always talk about the om or they recite the om. Vishanti yad yatayo vitaragaha. Those who are free from attachment, sincere practitioners, they vishanti, they attain or they enter. Vishanti literally means enter into, or here it means attain. Yad icchantaha, desiring which, brahmacharyam charanti, desiring that Brahman, they practice brahmacharya. Tat te padam, that particular goal, padam here means goal. Sangrahena pravakshe, I will explain in a manner that you can easily comprehend. That Brahman, which is denoted by the syllable om, which those who know the Vedas describe, and which those sincere practitioners that are free from material attachment attain, and seeking which people practice celibacy, that destination will be explained by me in a manner that can be grasped properly. The 12th shloka. Sarvadvarani sanyamya mano hridi nirudhya cha murdhnyadhyayat manah pranam astito yoga dharanam. Om ityekaksharam brahma vyaharan mamanusmaran yah prayati tyajan deham sayati paramam gatim. These two shlokas, they are meant to be read together because the first shloka is incomplete by itself. Along with the second shloka, it's complete. Okay, so we will read the meaning of this shloka. It says, I'll again read Sri Baladeva's commentary because it is more comprehensive than Vishwanath Chakravarti's. It includes the points that he has made. Yoga prakaramaha sarvayati. So in these two shlokas, he now elaborates a little bit more on the aspects of Ashtanga Yoga. It says, Sarvani bahijnana dvarani shrotradini sanyamya shabdadibhyo vishayebhya pratyahritya. Sarvani, all bahijnana dvarani. So we have what are called as the indriyas, right? We have pancha jnanendriya, or in Sanskrit, pancha jnanendriyani. Jnanendriyam, jnanendriyani. Pancha jnanendriyani are the 5 knowledge acquiring senses, and pancha karmendriyani, 5 acting senses or activity related senses. Okay, so what does it mean? So the 5 here is talking about the jnanendriyani. What are the jnanendriyani? They're also called the jnana dwarani. Dwarani means through those senses we acquire knowledge. The senses are like the doors to knowledge. So what are those 5 senses? The sense of vision, the sense of sight, the sense of touch, the sense of smell, the sense of taste, and the sense of hearing. Right? So these 5 senses, shrotradini, shrotram. So shrotram, you see, each of these senses, when people talk about them, there are 2 levels at which they talk about them. First is the neophyte level. The neophyte level, shrotram means the ears. But the real meaning of shrotram as a sense is not the ear, the physical ear, but the sense of hearing that is present in the space inside the ear. That sense is not a gross thing. The ear is a gross thing. It's made of flesh, right? It's made of flesh and muscle and whatever, tissues. But the sense is a subtle item. It's a material item. It is also jadavastu. It is matter. But it is a subtle matter, not gross matter, like the ear. Similarly, the sense of sight. Okay, chakshu. You say chakshur indriyam. When you say chakshur indriyam, chakshu in a neophyte level of speaking is the eye, the eyeball, the eye. But chakshu as indriyam, chakshur indriyam, when we say, we mean the sense of vision, the ability to see, which is present inside the eye, which is present in the subtle body. in the linga shariram. Okay, that is always present with the jivatma when he is in the samsara. Even after this body dies, when the body dies, this I will degrade, right? When the jivatma leaves this body, the I will no longer function because the jivatma has left. But that chakshur indriyam travels with the jivatma with his linga shariram, because unless the jivatma gets mukti, the linga shariram is not given up. So it travels with the jivatma to the next body. And there, depending on whether the body has an eye or not, if the body has a functioning eye, then the sense of vision will become activated. If it doesn't have a functioning eye, then it remains inactive, it remains dormant, like that of a person who is visually challenged. Right? The eye is there, but it's not working. It's not in working condition. And therefore, the sense of vision is there in that person, but it's dormant. He cannot see. You follow? So that is the same thing applies for all the 5 senses. So each of these 5 senses are jnanendriya. Through them, we acquire knowledge about this world. It's through these 5 senses we acquire knowledge about this world. Okay, then bahirjnana dwarani shrotradini samyamya. So yoga is the process by which one regulates the engagement of these senses. What does that mean? That normally our senses are engaged in their objects. Vishaya. So sense of, for example, sight, chakshur indriyam. What is the vishaya for that? It is like rupa, like your form. I can see your form. I can see the colors. Rupa in Nyaya means color. In Vedanta, it means form. But form and color are actually very closely related. Because of color, I can see the form. Right? So we'll talk about that in more detail some other time. But rupa means form. Okay, we'll take it as form. So now, engaging the senses in their respective objects means engaging the eye in form, engaging the ear or the sense of hearing, shrotrendriyam in some sound, hearing some sound, engaging the skin in the sense of touch, or in some object, touching some object, etc. Now, pratyahritya, withdrawing the senses from their objects. That is required in yoga. Why? Because the objective of yoga is to develop the realization that I am not a part of this material world. I'm not a part of this material existence. Right? So when the senses are always engaged in their objects, then that realization will not come. The realization that I'm not a part of this material existence comes only when we withdraw it from there. When we are fully absorbed in it, then we identify with this material existence. Okay, that is why in yoga, in all the schools of Indian philosophy, this concept of pratyahar, withdrawing from there. Okay, in the 2nd chapter of Gita, Sri Bhagavan gives the example of a tortoise. How a tortoise, if it sees even some slight, if it fears that there is some enemy coming to attack me or something, slight disturbance is enough. It will immediately stand wherever it is and withdraw its limbs inside the shell. And then it just sits there. So for some passerby, it looks like a piece of stone or a rock. It just goes away. And after some time, after sufficient time has passed and there's no disturbance, again the tortoise will take its limbs out and go. So the tortoise example is given in the 2nd chapter of Bhagavad-gita, how withdrawing the senses means completely going inside oneself. One's real existence is inside oneself, not outside. Okay, that's the understanding. Pratyahrityam, dosha darshanabhyasena tad vimukaihi taihi tan grinhanya. So how do you do that? When you do this, how do you convince yourself? You convince yourself by understanding or telling yourself the defect or the wrong in keeping your senses absorbed in their objects. As long as the senses are absorbed in the objects, I am still materially absorbed. So showing that dosha, that is the dosha, defect or wrong, showing that it is wrong, telling the mind that no, I should not do this. Dosha darshana abhyasena, repeatedly telling yourself that no, I should not be engaging my senses in the objects. I should withdraw my senses. I should withdraw my senses. Again and again, showing yourself it is wrong, telling yourself this is wrong, not to do this, pull yourself out of it. Okay? That vimukaihi tan grandhamya means understanding that this is wrong in terms of seeing the objects of the senses and the engagement of the senses in their objects as a wrong thing. Shrotradi samyame api manaha prachareda ityataha aha. But even after you control the senses, even after you subdue the senses and pull them inside, manaha prachareta, the mind can still wander. because the mind is not a part of these five senses. So the mind will still sit and imagine. Like, for example, when we are dreaming in the swapnavastha. Okay, so then we are sleeping. Our consciously we are not engaging our senses in something. But the mind goes everywhere. Mind is engaging in the senses or objects of the senses in its own way. So then what should you do? So manaha hridi sthite mai antarjnana dwaram mano niruddhya. The antarjnana dwaram, jnanendriyam. Antarjnanendriyam is the mind. Mind is also, in some sense, a jnanendriyam. It's actually a one level subtle jnanendriyam. Because through the mind, once we get signals from the outside world through the senses, the mind does the analysis of that knowledge. And the mind comes to conclusions. That is called anuman. Anuman means logical reasoning or yukti. So the mind is always processing and new knowledge is created by the mind. So, Shrotradi sanyame api manah pracharete ityataha aha hridi sthite mai antarjnana dwaram mano niruddhya. Situate the mind inside me. Mai means in me, in Krishna. Krishna is saying, fix your mind inside me. Withdraw all your other five senses within yourself and fix your mind in me. Mana niruddhya niveshya manasa api tan smaran. Because the mind, if it is left to itself, you have restrained the objects. That's why in the third chapter, in the Karma Yoga chapter, when he introduces Karma Yoga, he says that one who gives up all his prescribed work, saying that I want to become a sannyasi. I don't want, because now I know that the goal of life is not to continue living in this world, but to go to Bhagavan. That's the goal of life. And therefore, what is the use of doing my duties? I will not do my duties, but I will just sit and meditate. So he says, one who does this, but whose mind is still absorbed in the sense objects. Mithyachara sa uchyate. He is called a mithyachari. Mithyachari means a pretender. Person with a false conduct. Mithya achara. Person whose conduct is not genuine. A kapati. A mithyachari. So he says, just by withdrawing your senses from the objects, it doesn't mean that you have conquered yoga. The mind has to be fixed properly. Therefore, Karma Yoga is prescribed in the beginning of the process of yoga. Because by Karma Yoga, what one does is one fixes one's mind in one's duties. One's duties are well defined. Everybody has their duties well defined. If they are not well defined, then one should get them well defined first. One should have a well defined role in life. One should know what one's duties are very clearly and just engage in them. Sincerely, thoroughly engage in them without thinking of the fruits of the work. Detaching oneself from the fruits of the work. Because if one is thinking of the fruits of the work, and if those are the motivators for one in doing one's work, then once again, one is back to square one. It's all back to square one. One is trying to get out of this material world. And so in the Karma Yoga process, detachment from the fruits. Engagement in the duties, but detachment from the fruits of those duties. One does not get motivated by the duties. One is actually motivated by the sense of duty itself. I want to attain that Brahman. I want to be spiritually perfect. I want jnana. That motivation says I should do my duty very sincerely. That is Karma Yoga. So in Karma Yoga, this aspect of not doing mithyachar, by engaging one's mind in one's duties. But when one has reached the stage of Ashtanga Yoga, when one has sufficiently mastered Karma Yoga, when one has become purified, one's mind has become calmed down, then it's easy to control the mind. And he says, Mai antarjnana dwaram mano niruddhya. Fix your mind in me. Me means who? In Sri Bhagavan, Krishna. At that point of time, when one is sufficiently purified, antarshuddhi, chitta shuddhi has happened. It's called chitta shuddhi. One's mind, one's desires have calmed down. Okay, it's no longer like a venomous snake. It's like a venomous snake whose fangs have been removed. It cannot do anything. So then the mind is ready to be fixed on Sri Bhagavan. Such a person can sit in yoga, do Ashtanga Yoga, withdraw their senses from the objects, and then fix the mind on Bhagavan. Niruddhya niveshya manasa api tan smaran. Atha kriyadwaram pranam cha murdhnyadhaya adav hritpadme vashikritya. So then what should one do? One should raise one's prana. The prana are those vital currents which are flowing through the body. Okay, it is said in yoga that if the prana flows perfectly in the body will never get disease. Body will be perfect. Okay, prana is a vayu tattva. It's a vayu padartha. Vayu is one of the elements of this material world, the gross elements. So vayu takes the form of prana, and there are 5 different types of prana, and there are 5 types of upaprana, totally 10 types of prana. So all those details actually I spoke in an earlier class, and we won't go into that detail now. It's just enough to say that the prana should flow properly in the body of a healthy person. And the prana flows through what are called the nadis in the body. They are subtle channels. The nadis are analogous to the arteries which carry blood, the arteries and veins in our body which are responsible, or which are the channels through which blood flows in the body. Okay, so in the gross body, in the stula shariram, when blood is flowing properly in the body, then what do we say? The body is a healthy body, right? The blood is not obstructed. When there is an obstruction, then the person gets a heart attack or whatever. Something happens to that person. Similarly, the prana should flow freely through the nadis. The nadis are subtle elements. They are not like the gross arteries and veins. Okay, so there is supposed to be a very large number of nadis. There is, in some texts it is said there are 72,000 nadis. Somewhere it is said there are 300,000 nadis in the body. They are flowing all over the body in different directions, and they carry the prana with them. So when the body is healthy, then these nadis function properly and the prana flows smoothly everywhere. Okay, all right. Now, what is the purpose of pranayam? All of us here, pranayam is a very common word. It's a very sophisticated word today. I'm doing pranayam. So what is the purpose of pranayam? The purpose of pranayam is to get control over the flow of prana. Normally, we don't have control, right? We don't even think about our prana. It's just flowing. Whatever way it wants, it's flowing. The person who is doing pranayam in Ashtanga Yoga, it's one of the stages of Ashtanga. It's the 3rd stage of Ashtanga Yoga. There, that person is trying to master the flow of the pranas to be able to control that direction of prana. Then he can control which way the prana flows to achieve whatever objective, the siddhis that he wants to achieve. Or in this case, he wants to achieve mukti. He wants to take himself out of this body by his own will and then go to Bhagavan. So for whatever purpose he wants to do, he wants to control the prana. So that's what is being said here. Atha kriyadwaram pranam cha murdhni adhaya. So this kriyadwaram, the prana is also called kriyadwaram because through the prana, the different activities inside the body happen, like the digestion, the heartbeat, the flow of air in the lungs, the downward movement, the evacuation of the waste in the body. All that happens because of proper movement of the prana. When the movement of prana is not proper, these functions will start getting disrupted. So now, kriyadwaram, that's why it's called kriyadwaram. The kriya happens through the prana. Murdhni adhaya. Murdhni means in the head. Murdhni means in the head. So sometimes the word murdhni refers to the head as a whole. Sometimes it refers to the top of the head, the skull here. It's called Brahmarandram here. So murdhni adhaya, bring the prana to that place. So the yogi, the Ashtanga yogi, is trained in how to do that. Raise the prana and bring it to that place. Then, hrit padme vashikritya tasmat urdhvagataya. So first it is taken to the heart region. The prana is brought to the heart region where Sri Bhagavan is sitting. The Paramatma is said to be in the region of the heart. So you're meditating on that Paramatma and you're bringing the prana to that Paramatma at that place. And then, tasmat urdhvagataya sushumnaya gurupadishtavartmana bhumijaya kramena bhruvor madhye tadupari brahmarandre cha sanstapya. Says urdhvagataya means the upward moving sushumnaya. So among the large number of nadis that we have, there are 3 principal nadis. One is called the ida nadi. That's on the left side of the body. It moves from top to bottom. Okay, and the second one is called the sushumna nadi. That's in the center of the body, in the middle of the body, right in the half partition. The third one is called the pingala. The pingala is on the right side of the body. So sushumnaya pranam urdhvagataya sushumnaya upari brahmarandre sansthavaya. So you have to take the prana, or this person has to take the prana through the sushumna nadi, not through the other 2. Sushumna nadi to the brahmarandra, bhruvor madhya. And how is it done? There's a process called bhumijaya krama. That process which we don't do in bhakti yoga, the Ashtanga yogis do. The name of that process is Bhumi Jaya. So through the Bhumi Jaya process, Guru Upadishtavartmana, by following the instructions of the Guru, how the Guru has taught this. So there is a Guru who teaches this. Unless the Guru teaches, the Shishya cannot learn, right? The Guru is everything in the process of yoga. So Guru Upadishtavartmana Bhumi Jaya Kramena Bhruvor Madhye Tadupari Brahmarandrecha Sanstapya. So by following the Bhumi Jaya process as taught by the Guru, one should elevate the prana through the Sushumna Nadi and place it here in the Brahmarandra. Brahmarandra is above, the Agnya Chakra is here. Atmanaha Mama Yogadharanam Apadashikam Mad-bhavanam astitaha kurvanna. He's saying that in that situation, one should think of me, meditate on my form. My form means Krishna's form, or the Paramatma's form as Narayan, standing there with his four hands, Shankha, Chakra, Gada, Padma, his Kirita. He says, Apadashikam, Yoga Dharanam. This dharana means holding it. This dharana should be Apadashikam, means from his feet to his head, the entire form, not just his face, or not just his chest, or not just his hands, but the entire body of Shri Bhagavan. Apadashikam, from his feet to his head. Mad-bhavanam astitya. He should be fully absorbed in me. Kurvan. Then what should he do? Om iti vachakam brahma tatra vyaharan ucharayan. Vyaharan antarucharayan, not loudly. He should, in his mind, inside his mind, he should chant Om again and again. Okay? Om. Om. Inside the mind. Okay? Not with his mouth, but with the mind completely closed. Eyes are half closed. Thinking of that Paramatma, just go on chanting Om. Okay? Vyaharan antarucharayan tat stauti ekaksharamiti ekam pradhanam cha tadaksharam avinashi chaiti. So that one aksharam, that Om is so powerful. It represents Shri Bhagavan. It is Bhagavan himself. That pradhanam, he's also called pradhana, that supreme origin. Aksharam, it is indestructible. Aksharam also means, aksharam has two meanings here. One is a syllable. It is one syllable, right? Om. And it also is, aksharam means it is indestructible, avinashi. It has no kshara. Iska nash nahi hota hai. Akshara. Avinashi chaiti. Tatha tad vachyam mam paramatmanam anusmaran. So that vachya. So Om is a describer and the described is the Paramatma. So with that Om, he is constantly thinking of me. So his inner mind is hearing Om, his inner ear, inner sense is hearing that Om, and his inner sense of vision is seeing me. So this, both the senses, inner senses, is fully absorbed in me. Anusmaranna, dhyayanna, yo deham tyajan prayati, one who leaves his body in that state of consciousness and travels. What happens to him? Sa paramam gatim mat salokyatam yati. He attains the supreme gati, the supreme state. Gati means situation or state. That supreme state. What is that supreme state? Mat salokyatam, my loka, my abode, my residence, where I stay. So he comes to the place where I stay. Yes, in that state. So this is Yoga Mishra Bhakti. Right? Yoga Mishra Bhakti means you're doing bhakti, but you take the process of Ashtanga Yoga to meditate on Sri Bhagavan. This is not the process that we follow. And especially in the Kali Yuga, this process is extremely difficult to follow. Because it requires a body and a mind, which people in the Kali Yuga, people like us, normally don't have. Right? Our minds and bodies are much weaker than what is required for practicing this form of yoga. Ashtanga Yoga, Bhakti through Ashtanga Yoga. That's why it's called Yoga Mishra Bhakti. Okay, so let me read the translation. It says, having completely restrained the senses from their objects, having placed the mind within the heart, having positioned one's vital energies, the prana, between the eyebrows, and being situated in yoga with me, one who leaves their body and travels while repeatedly chanting the syllable Om, that is a form of Brahman, contemplating upon me, attains the supreme destination. Okay, so in these 3 shlokas, Sri Bhagavan has concluded 6 shlokas he gave from shloka number 8 to shloka number 13. 6 shlokas in which he refers to bhakti practiced through the process of Ashtanga Yoga and thinking about him at the point of leaving the body. So here the yogi, because of his the extreme amount of sattva guna, this requires extreme amount of sattva guna. Rajoguna, tamoguna, almost zero inside him. So in that state of sattva, he is able to control his mind to the extent that he can very easily think of that form of Bhagavan and chant Om and be completely detached from requiring food, water, sleep, nothing. Endlessly he can do this until the point that his body falls apart and he can carry himself out at the point that he wants to carry, at the time that he decides, okay, now I'm ready. He can just rupture his skull and leave the body completely. So the great yogis in the past used to sometimes do this process. Yeah, samadhi. They used to take this. Even in the Kali Yuga, sometimes there are cases where people have taken what is called as Jivan Samadhi. It's when they were alive, they were placed in samadhi because they went into that state of samadhi where they could meditate like this. So such people are very rare, very, very rare. Okay, and it's not for us to imitate them. It's not appropriate for us to try to imitate them or not even think of doing this just like that. It's a very developed and mature process that requires its own training and qualification. Since it's very difficult to do this in Kali Yuga, the process of Nama Sankirtanam is prescribed, whereby by doing Nama Sankirtana regularly, by doing it in a sincere manner, one is able to think of Bhagavan all the time and achieve the same state at the point of death, at the point of leaving the body. So in the next class, we will go into the 14th shloka onwards, where Sri Bhagavan goes into other aspects of bhakti. The 8th chapter is about bhakti essentially. So he talks about other things related to bhakti and what happens to the person who, after leaving their body, his destination. He describes what their destination is, etc., etc. A very interesting, very, very interesting concepts that he will teach us from that point. Today, I will complete the story of Jada Bharata, which started 2 sessions back. So, the story of Jada Bharata or Bharata is in the Panchama Skanda of Bhagavatam, Srimad Bhagavatam, spread over 8 adhyayas, 8 chapters, adhyaya number 7 to adhyaya number 14. It's spread over 8 chapters. So I will quickly review. We have already completed a few of those chapters. In the 7th chapter, we hear about Bharata, the king Bharata, who was the son of the incarnation of Vishnu, the avatar of Vishnu called Rishabhadeva. And Bharata is such a saintly king. He's a Raja Rishi. Right from his childhood, he has the gunas of a Mahabhagavata, Mahabhakta. And he's very pure. So he lives that life. His whole charitra is given in the 7th adhyaya, chapter 7 of Bhagavatam, of the 5th skanda of Bhagavatam. When he is sufficiently advanced and his children have grown up, he hands over the kingdom to his children and goes to the forest to live the life of a recluse. And in that reclusion, he practices bhakti. This is given in the 7th chapter. In the 8th chapter, it's described that same Bharata who left his family with complete detachment, as easily as somebody who evacuates waste, leaves that waste. He left his family with that ease, became attached to a deer, a baby deer. And that attachment resulted in him thinking about the deer at the point of his death. When he was leaving the body, when death came upon him, he was not doing Ashtanga Yoga. So he did not control when the death should come to him. Death came to him, just like it comes to anybody. And at that point of time, instead of thinking about Bhagavan, which he had been doing all his life, he was only thinking about that baby deer. As a result, he was born as a deer. And he's born as a deer in a place not very far from where he was actually staying, from the Pulastya Pulaha Ashrama. So he's born in a place called the Kalanjara Parvat. Since the Pulastya Pulaha Ashrama is in current day Nepal, it is even there on Google Maps. You can locate it. still a place there. And a lot of saintly people live there even now. It's on the banks of Gandaki River. And even today, there is a Gandaki River flowing there. Okay. So I guess the Kalanjara Parvat, where this deer was born, is also somewhere nearby. So it's also in Nepal, I think. So anyway, so once the deer is born, it is said that Bharata, he could not take his body with him, nor could he take the deer with him. But he took all the memory with him, which was gifted to him because he was a very great sage. He had done so much tapasya, so much sadhana, that the power of his tapasya and sadhana allowed him to take his memory with him. His memory went with him. So he remembered in the body of the deer all that he had done and the mistake that he had made. And he immediately began to repent the mistake. But he could not do anything. He was born as a deer, so he had to live the full life of a deer. So he lives the life as a deer. He leaves his mother at a very young age, the mother deer at a very young age. And even as a small, young child deer, he travels from the Kalanjara Parvata back to Pulahashram, where he had done his sadhana as Bharata. Right? Very interesting, isn't it? The deer is thinking like this. Yeah, he's thinking of going. So it goes back, and there he lives in the company of sages. All the time he's thinking of Bhagavan. He doesn't want to go away anywhere else. And he doesn't want to develop any further attachment. So in that life as a deer, he sits, at the end of his life, he sits on the Gandaki River. He submerges his body partially and leaves his body there. After leaving that body, he is gifted the birth as a Brahmana. This is the third birth in the narrative, as Jada Bharata. He takes birth as the son of a Brahmana, a very, very, very devoted, sincere Brahmana, very pure Brahmana. And as Jada Bharata, again, in that life too, the memory of both his past births are with him. So he remembers everything that has happened. And he is committed that in this birth, I will attain Bhagavan. I will not make a mistake again. So in order to prevent himself from becoming attached in that birth, he behaves as if he is retarded. He does not behave like a normal Brahmana. His father tries to teach him whatever a Brahmana father should teach his child, like the Vedas, the different Brahmana samskaras that he should do, the different Nitya Naimitika karyas, but he doesn't learn anything. He acts as if, he pretends as if he has not understood anything deliberately, and displays himself as a very dumb person because he doesn't want anyone to take interest in him. He fears that if they actually start recognizing that he is a bhakta, that he is great and he's this and that, that attachment may again come and people will start flocking around him. He doesn't want that. He doesn't want to engage in his Brahmana work. He's beyond the stage of a Brahmana. He's a Mahabhagavata. So as time passes, his father dies and his brothers, they don't take much interest in him. They just treat him like an animal in the house. They let him live. Like for example, you have a cow in the house. You may have a dog or a cat that lives with you. You feed it something. So they let him live in the house. They don't throw him out. They're not angry with him. They're just feeling compassionate. They let him live like that. Once, when he's asked to take care of a field in the night time, some dacoits catch him. And these dacoits want to sacrifice a human being to their deity, Mother Kali. So they catch him and they are about to kill him in front of Mother Kali when she sees this, and she is not able to tolerate that. Because she sees a Mahan Vyakti, a Mahapurusha, being treated very badly by these people. Although he is not bothered, his state of consciousness is so elevated that he has no botheration. But she is not able to tolerate it. So she comes out of her deity, she kills the dacoits and frees him from there. So then Jada Bharata keeps wandering around. Okay, he doesn't want to go back to his house also. He's now away from the house. So he just wanders here and there. He lies down somewhere. He's living the life of a recluse. So then what happens? Okay, until here we have seen in the last session. Now in chapter number 10, Jada Bharata is wandering here and there. And there is a king in a place called Sindhu Sauvira. Okay, the place known as Sindh. Okay. And then I is smiling. Right? So there's a kingdom called Sindhu Sauvira. In those days, it was known as Sindhu Sauvira. So there's a king called Rahugana. Rahugana is the king of Sindhu Savira. And Rahugana is on his way to some place. Actually, Rahugana at that time, he was actually not just an ordinary king. He was a king very inquisitive about spiritual matters. So at that point of time, the sage Kapila, actually one of the avatars of Vishnu is also called Kapila, Kapila Rishi. And in that avatara, Kapila gave the philosophy called as Sankhya Darshan, right? It comes from Kapila Rishi. So Vishnu took the form of Kapila Rishi, and the son of Devahuti. So the sage Kapila is staying somewhere, and this king Rahugana is on the way to his ashrama to ask him some questions about Adhyatma Gyan. He wants Adhyatma Gyan. He doesn't know much. He just wants to learn. He's curious. Just like we are all curious about Adhyatma Gyan. We are reading the Gita. We gathered together here to understand this. So he's like that. So he's on the way. And being a king, he is being carried on a palanquin. Pallaki, right? That pallaki or palki. In North India, we say palki. So they're carrying him on that palki. And the bearers, they're feeling tired because they feel that there is one bearer short. Ek aadmi kam hai. So they're looking for a man. The leader of those palanquin bearers is looking for one person more so that the weight will be more reasonably distributed on their shoulders. So as they're looking, they find one healthy looking Brahmana fellow just lying there on the side, not doing anything. He's just sitting there, wasting his time. They just look at him and they say, oh, this guy looks nice, young, healthy. Let's catch him. But they catch hold of Jada Bharata. Just catch him and drag him. And they say, okay, chalo, utao isko. And they put him there. So he's not disturbed by that. He just comes, whatever they say, because he just wants this life to pass. So he comes there. They say, now carry. So he lifts the palanquin along with the others. And he starts walking. But he is now a Mahapurusha. So one of his things, one of his values is that because of me, no other living creature should feel any pain or should be killed, should be disturbed in any manner. So as he is walking, he is looking at the ground. If any ants are moving there, or if any insect is there, if some snake is there, I should not step on it. Because of me, that should not get killed or even disturbed. Okay, so he's looking down and walking. He's not looking at the other bearers. And what he does, he doesn't walk in rhythm with them. They are marching like soldiers. But he halts, examines the ground, and then makes a step in order to match their step. And then again halts, again examines the ground, and again takes a long step to match the step. Now imagine if there are 10 people carrying a palanquin, 9 of them are marching in rhythm, and one person is walking in this manner, then what will happen to the palanquin? The palanquin obviously gets disturbed. It's like an aircraft in turbulence, right? It goes through turbulence. It's like shaking like this. So Rahugana is suddenly disturbed. All this time it was going smoothly, but suddenly it's disturbed. So he opens his curtain, looks outside, and he says, what's going on here? Why are you guys walking like this? So immediately they are very scared of him. He's a king. So they don't know what to say. So they immediately reveal the truth. They say, Maharaj, it's not we who are doing this. There's a new guy who doesn't know how to walk properly. He has just been added here. So that's why it's happening. So Rahugana immediately turns to Jada Bharata. He says, hey, look, it looks like you're very old and you don't know how to walk. You're very tired. It looks like I'm giving you too much work to do. Oh, I can feel your pain. So Rahugana, very, very sarcastically, he scolds Jada Bharata. Jada Bharata hears whatever Rahugana says, but he's not bothered. He's simply not bothered. That sound comes in his ear and goes out of the other ear. And he continues to walk in the same manner. So after a few more seconds have passed, Rahugana becomes furious. He loses his temper. So he looks at Jada Bharata and he says, who do you think you are? You don't know that I am a king and you're carrying my palanquin? So he, using very harsh words, he scolds Rahugana. And he says, if you don't know how to behave properly, I will send you to the residence of Yama right now. Walk properly. So at that point of time, something happens. Jada-bharata opens his mouth. He stops, and then he folds his hands in front of the king. And that's where he begins his discourse to Rahugana. So his first few words, when Rahugana hears that, Rahugana, he's shocked. What Jada-bharata speaks is very deep philosophy that no ordinary person can speak. Only somebody who is realized, a realized Atma, a Tattvajnani can speak words like that. For example, he tells Rahugana, he says that you describe me as a fat, healthy person, but this kind of words are not spoken by somebody who has Tattvajnana, because after all, it is not me who is fat. I am just the Atma in the body. It is this body which is fat. This body becomes fat, it may become thin, and it will die after some time. So neither you nor me can ever be fat or thin. It's only the body which can become like that. Moment Rahugana hears this, he doesn't know what has happened. So it strikes him that maybe this guy, because we caught him just now, he was lying on the side, maybe he's some great avadhuta. Okay, there are people like that who are babas, great sages. Sometimes they just sit as beggars. We don't know, we can't make out, because they have been in that consciousness for a long time. Right? That's why we should be careful actually when you insult a beggar also. Don't know who they can be. Right? We should not insult anyone. Right? Even a beggar may not be an ordinary beggar, maybe a great personality. So Rahugana suddenly develops this thing, hearing this person's word, which has spoken with so much clarity, that this person may not be an ordinary person. And this is Rahugana's great character, that even though he was short-tempered and he was like any other king, he had the ego of a king, he was very proud. But he also had this ability to recognize that somebody may actually be a very great personality. So immediately he stops the palanquin, he stops all the bearers, and he gets down from there. And he bows down to Jada-bharata. He says that, please tell me, who are you? I very sincerely apologize to you. I mistook you for an ordinary person. But the way you are talking, it doesn't look like you are an ordinary person. Please reveal to me, who are you? Are you that same Kapila whom I am going to see now? Have you come here in this form just to surprise me? Who are you? I have committed some very grave offense against you. Please pardon me. And now please tell me more. Whatever you are speaking, please speak more of that, because that's what I'm going to hear. I was on the way to Kapila Ashrama only for hearing this. Please let me know more about this. Okay? So this also shows Rahugana's character. It's not that an ordinary person will not be able to even respond like this. Some other king or somebody else, some ordinary person, may just retort back and may actually punish that person for speaking that way. But Rahugana actually is able to recognize that Jada-bharata is a very, very different personality. So after apologizing to him, the conversation between Jada-bharata and Rahugana begins. And in the Bhagavatam, the next 3 chapters are a discourse by Jada-bharata to Rahugana. Jada-bharata begins by scolding Rahugana. Now he scolds him. He says that, he begins by saying that you just now spoke like a very great man, but you don't know anything. I can make out that you know nothing. That you are actually a stupid fool. He says, literally uses these words. You speak like a very great learned person, but you are actually a fool. You don't know anything. And then he gives him what we today call Vedanta, the knowledge of Vedanta, very fine knowledge. Okay, so in these 3 chapters, this knowledge is covered. I've called it part 1, part 2, part 3, because it's split in 3 chapters. In these 3 chapters is a lecture by Jada-bharata to Rahugana. Rahugana interrupting sometimes, asking some new question. It's very similar to how Krishna is talking to Arjuna, but very deep philosophy, very deep. He goes into aspects of Sankhya, divides the difference between the Atma and the body, and the nature of Bhagavan, what one should do to attain Bhagavan, all that is described here. And it's very beautiful to read. It's very interesting to read. So in some future lecture, I will go into the details of this discourse. Maybe I can have a lecture only on this discourse by Jada-bharata to Rahugana, the points covered by in that discourse. and how this Vedanta is structured. If you read this discourse, you get a very good idea of what Vedanta is all about. Okay? Not everything in Vedanta is covered there, but it's the essence of Vedanta. It's covered in this discourse. And at the end of this discourse, Rahugana is fully enlightened, and he offers his prayers to Jada-bharata, and he goes his way, and Jada-bharata goes his way. They separate there, and Jada-bharata then goes his way. And what happened to Jada-bharata after that is not described. It's assumed that he went and attained perfection at the end of his life. And in the 14th chapter, this next chapter, this whole narrative concludes with Shuka Muni. So actually the Bhagavatam is a conversation between Shuka Muni and Parikshit. Right? And so Shuka Muni, he's the one who is narrating all this story between, the whole story of Bharata is narrated by Shuka Muni to Parikshit. So now it goes one level back. Shuka Muni then analyzes this discourse. This great discourse by Jada-bharata to Rahugana, the analysis of that. Because in the beginning of the 14th chapter, Parikshit tells Shuka Muni that you told me so many things about what Jada-bharata spoke to Rahugana, but I could not understand much of it. Can you make it simpler for me? Can you simplify it and explain to me in simple words what he was trying to say, all the metaphors that were used? So Shuka Muni gives a discourse here to Parikshit and explains that whole thing in a simpler language, explaining what those different metaphors meant. And then he gives a conclusion. So I was reading this and I was so, thinking that in our normal Gita class, we have a limited amount of time. So to cover all these things in one class is not possible. So I will have in some future class focused only on that discourse and all the elements. And then we can understand this in much more depth. But it is very much aligned to what the Bhagavad-gita is teaching us. Bhagavad-gita and Bhagavatam, they are complementary texts written by the same author, by Vyasa, right? Vyasa has written both of them. So today's class, I will stop with this and I invite you to ask your questions and comments. Those who are online also, kindly feel free to ask whatever doubts you may have.
Yes, sir. Pranam, sir. Nilesh this side, sir.
Who is it?
Nilesh, sir. Nilesh this side.
Nilesh, yes. Could you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. So I joined a bit late, sir, today. Sir, today you said that whatever we do throughout our life will help us to remember Bhagwan Krishna at the end of our life.
Yeah.
So my question is it possible to influence somebody's thinking at the time of death? And that is why do we ask के वो गीता पाठ कराइए आखिरी के समय में, या गंगा जल पिलाइए, या गाय की पूंछ ले आइए, या बछिया की को पास में ले आइए उसकी पूंछ रहने से. So is that a process of influencing somebody's thought at the time of his deathbed?
Exactly. It is. So if a person, for example, has already been absorbed in Bhagavad Seva throughout his life and has done bhakti and has always tried to remember Bhagavan in whatever he does, at the point of death also he would want to do that. But the point of death is described as a point where it is not easy to think of Bhagavan because of so many other phenomena happening. There's weakness in the body, there is bile rising up, there is fever in the body becomes hot, it becomes cold. In one of the chapters in Bhagavatam, this is described how the death happens, how somebody's death and what that person experiences at death. Similarly, in another place in Bhagavatam, in the Tritiya Skanda, birth is described. What happens to the Jivatma when it takes a human birth, how it goes into the mother's body and how it experiences the womb of the mother. Okay, so both death and birth are very confusing and very difficult phases of life. So the point of death, even if somebody has done bhakti throughout their life, it may not be very easy. It is definitely easier for that person than for somebody who never thought of Bhagavan. So the others who are around that person, they will try to help, right? Out of kindness. They want to help that person. They will chant in the ear of that person Shri Bhagavan's names. They will chant some mantras in his ear so that let him hear that. Let him think of Bhagavan. They'll keep a photo of Bhagavan in front of him. If he's lying on the bed, then at a place where his eyes can fall opposite to his bed. Even in the hospitals, they do that. They keep a photo of Bhagavan so that they can see that Bhagavan at the point of death. All things. I mean, so whatever way you can help the person to think of Bhagavan, you should try to help.
Right, sir. Right, sir. Thanks.
Sir, something you mentioned about the tortoise, when there is disturbance outside, the tortoise tend to
Yes.
senses. So what if there is disturbance in internal part? Then the question, because usually the disturbance starts from within itself sometimes.
So both internally, yeah, you have a allied question.
Can you repeat the question on the mic?
Yes, the others who are online. Yes, his question here was that I mentioned about the tortoise. If there's an external disturbance, it withdraws its limbs inside the shell. Similarly, we should withdraw our senses from their objects. But what if there is a disturbance inside us, in the mind? Very often the disturbance is not outside, but inside the mind. Then how do we overcome that? Yes, the disturbance in the mind is more difficult to overcome than withdrawing the senses from outside. And that is why it is advised that we should try to live a life that is sattvic. By living a life that is sattvic, which involves various aspects, a lifestyle, it is not just one thing. Living a sattvic life is not just doing one particular thing, but all aspects of our lifestyle, like the time we get up in the day, the kind of food we eat, the time we go to bed at night, the type of people we associate with, the kind of things that we watch, the videos we watch, or the books we read, the kind of attitude we keep towards others, all put together contributes to a sattvic lifestyle. And by practicing a sattvic lifestyle, we try to minimize the instances when disturbance internally will come. We try to create our mind. We try to take our mind to a situation when it can always be calm to the maximum extent possible. So it's an optimization process. We try to maximize the time that the mind remains undisturbed. But yes, if disturbance is there inside, then withdrawing from outside will be impossible. Unless the mind inside is calm, it is not possible to withdraw from outside, isn't it? So we have to first pay attention to the inside, then to the outside. It's an inside-out process. Yes.
It is attained by living according to Shakti.
Yes.
And like also there was mentioned to do a lot of practice.
Yes.
That unwavering one.
Yes. Yes. So here, when we are talking about Gita, we are also talking about practicing through the process of bhakti. Because in this age called Kali Yuga, the process recommended, although the Bhagavad-gita describes Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga, the Bhagavad-gita also concludes or highlights Bhakti Yoga as the process that is recommended for this age. The Gita was spoken at the beginning of the Kali Yuga, or I would say at the end of the Dwapar Yuga, just before the Kali Yuga began. So the emphasis on Bhakti in the Gita is given so that we can align ourselves with it. In the process of Bhakti, the different elements of Bhakti, different limbs of Bhakti are such that naturally, in a very natural manner, the mind is fixed on Bhagavan, on Sri Bhagavan. So we end up, as one progresses in the path of Bhakti, the thoughts of Bhagavan naturally come to our mind more and more and more. And that becomes a part of our life. It becomes an innate part of our life. So then controlling the mind does not look like such a difficult thing, as difficult as it would look otherwise. Am I answering your question?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. 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 Even without bhakti, people can control their mind to some extent. There's no doubt about that. Like even, for example, there are so many schools which are teaching yogasanas with pranayama, right? So even doing yogasanas with pranayama and following a lifestyle can make a person very sattvic. There are so many organizations which are teaching that, and that's a good thing. So even if there is no bhakti, like the way we are teaching bhakti here. Even without that, a good amount of sattva can be brought into one's life, and one can live a life which is calm, peaceful, largely calm and peaceful. Without, maybe you can take a piece of paper and take it outside, without killing it. Do it gently. Take a small piece of paper.
So also in karma yoga, that is you said that instead of focusing on your pulse, focus on your duties.
Yes.
It is so tough to do that. Like if you want to start something, it's start with the goals first.
Yes.
So how do you become advanced stage in karma yoga? How do you attain the advanced stage in karma yoga?
For somebody practicing karma yoga, before they start practicing karma yoga, they are like us. So what is the normal common man's way of thinking? Like you correctly said, it is work which motivates, the fruits of the work which motivate one to take up work. Why does one do anything, or why does one take up any initiative, one initiate anything? It's because they think that from this initiative, I will get something, I will get that thing, right? It could be, that thing could be money, it could be power, it could be status, it could be simply respect of others, recognition, like somebody does social service, and then they want others to know that they have done that service. They don't want to do it anonymously, because what they want from the social service is that others will appreciate, others will recognize them, reward them. So that is the karma phala, right? And from the Vedic perspective, karma phala also refers to the punya that we get. By doing our karma properly, what prescribed duties, nitya naimatika karma, we get what is called as punya. Punya means merit, like credit points. And that punya in future births, or even in the same birth, it gives us good experience. It gives us sukham, happiness, right? So keeping that in mind, people do their duties. Now in karma yoga, the word yoga means connecting with Bhagavan. So when one takes up karma yoga, one's goal, so even to start karma yoga, one should know why one is doing karma yoga, right? Why is one doing karma yoga? One is doing because one wants to go to Bhagavan. One wants to understand Bhagavan, connect with Bhagavan. Because one has got the information, at least one has got the information, if not the realization, but information, that there is far superior happiness in connecting with Bhagavan, in becoming a jnani, in getting jnana, adhyatma jnana. So when one gets that information, that there is a much higher form of happiness there, then one may begin karma yoga. So then one's motivation to do work becomes that happiness. I want to experience that sublime happiness, that happiness which is beyond the happiness of money, the happiness of getting fame, the happiness of social respect, the happiness that comes from getting power, material power. I want that happiness, that supreme happiness. So thinking like that, one begins karma yoga. That's the motivation for karma yoga. So there, one tries to detach oneself from things like money, power, respect, status, etc., and the punya that comes from doing one's karma. And one does karma only for the sake of doing karma. In the sense, one says that it is my duty. I am a Kshatriya. If I am a Kshatriya, these are my duties of a Kshatriya. Like in the case of Arjuna, he is a Kshatriya. Now he is there, he is supposed to fight the war. So in this manner, one thinks, karyam ityeva karma, means karyam, it has to be done. One thinks that this is something that I am supposed to do, and one does it. And one says, now I have done it. I don't want anything from it. I have done my duty and I am content. If I didn't do my duty, then there is something wrong. If I did my duty, I am now correct. And one then thinks of that jnana. One day I will become eligible for that jnana. And all this happens under the guidance of a guru. One is inspired by a guru who has himself done that. So one's mind is fixed on that guru. I should say on the feet of that guru, right? It's through the inspiration of somebody like a guru or other people also who are doing karma yoga that one gets inspired to think in that manner. So it's a mental model. One's mind is now oriented in that manner.
So is there anything described in Gita, like let's say when you want to attain, let's say, solace, you have to focus on God. Is karma yoga possible in Kali Yuga?
it's very difficult to practice. It is possible in the sense in which, see, first of all, see his question for those who are online. His question was, is Karma Yoga possible in Kali Yuga? Now, very fundamentally, if you look at how karma is defined in Karma Yoga in the most pure sense, karma is nitya naimittika karma. That is, for a Brahmana, if somebody is born as a Brahmana, then he has certain duties for him. Somebody is born as a Kshatriya, then there are certain duties. Vaishya, Shudra. And this is given in the Smriti Shastra. Okay. Now, in the Kali Yuga, although we are all born in different caste by our birth, none of us identify really with our respective varnas, right? We just do whatever we are sent to school. We do whatever a teacher in the school says. Then we go to college. Then we end up somewhere in some job. So where is that Brahmana karma, Kshatriya karma? Nothing is there, right? We are not really engaged in any of them. So in the most pure sense, Karma Yoga is ruled out in the Kali Yuga. Now, if you take it in a different sense, that okay, you're not doing what the Shastra says as karma, Shastra karma, but you're still doing some duties, right? Let's say you're now, for example, a software engineer, or you're a manager in some, you're a technology manager, you're a prod man, right? You're a product manager of something. So you are something, right? You have some duties. Now, in that, can you practice Karma Yoga by saying that I will only do my duty thinking not about the money that I will get, not about the promotion that I will get, not about the better job that I'm looking forward to. Because my plan was to only join this company and be here for 3 years and then switch to that company. I want to switch to Google. That's how I joined this company. So then if you're doing Karma Yoga, you stop thinking like that. You start thinking that, okay, I will do this because I have my duty. I have to do something. So I'll do this morning to evening. I'll do my duty sincerely. And I will offer whatever I get. Because in Karma Yoga, one of the elements of Karma Yoga in the Bhagavad-gita is to offer all the fruits. Because you're saying detachment from the fruits. But the fruits will anyway come. For example, if somebody does their duty sincerely, on the one hand, punya will come. The punya, you cannot see it. Even without that punya, you will see some things which will, intangible things also will come. Like, for example, you will get reward. The king will reward you. If a Brahmana does his job sincerely, the local king will reward him with a lot of money. He'll give him some cows. He'll give him wealth, power. All those things will come. Right? Now what happens? So Shri Bhagavan says, offer everything to me. Okay. So if somebody wants to practice Karma Yoga now in this Kali Yuga, then if they're a product manager in some Google, then they think, how can I use the money I'm getting in the service of Bhagavan? So that way it becomes aligned to Karma Yoga. Let me detach myself from the fruit. This money is not for me. I will take only what I require for my decent living. I mean, not that you have to live in a hut or something like that, but you live in some decent flat, but you don't live an extravagant life. You have some basic furniture. You have enough basic comfort to live a healthy life. A healthy life where you can be peaceful and think of Bhagavan. So every day you get up. You want to live a sattvic life. One of the goals of Karma Yoga is to increase the sattva inside us. Because Karma Yoga prepares us. Karma Yoga is not an end by itself. Karma Yoga, even in the Bhagavad-gita, is described as something that is the initial stage for either Jnana Yoga or Ashtanga Yoga. So Karma Yoga is a feeder process. It feeds the process of Jnana Yoga or Ashtanga Yoga. So why does it feed? Because it creates the sattva. By practicing Karma Yoga, one develops sattva guna. One becomes more and more and more sattvic. And when one is sufficiently sattvic, when there is enough sattva in somebody, then one is ready for practicing Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga or Ashtanga Yoga. So this can be done by somebody working in Google also today. Right? They can try to increase the level of sattva in them and not go beyond sense pleasures. What do most people do when they earn money? They indulge in sense pleasures, right? What will most of your, for example, the batchmates you're studying with, what will they do when they make a lot of money? All of you are going to make a lot of money, right? I don't have to ask you. I can tell you, I can predict. Looking at my students of the last 15 years, right? So you're going to make a lot of money. Now, what will most of your batchmates do? They will indulge themselves, right? They'll go to resorts and they will post it on Facebook also, what they did in the resort, right? Now, this the Karma Yogi will not do. The Karma Yogi will say, this is not required in my life. It's not required for me to buy a big Mercedes Benz, which occupies the space of 2 cars. For me, for my work, this size car is good enough. Right? He doesn't have to be extraordinarily austere, but he just has to be realistic and say that, okay, this is enough, then why should I go for something bigger? So this is, I'm just trying to answer your question by saying, if you want to practice karma yoga in this age, then this is one way that can be done. Live a simple sattvic life and do your duty as a matter of duty, not chasing material fruits, and offer whatever you get in the service of society, in the service of Bhagavan. That would be karma yoga for today's age. I think I've given a very long answer to a very short question, but I hope it clarifies some concepts in this.
So the motivation should not be extrinsic. It should come just from the want to follow the movement.
Yes.
If we are attached to the fruits, the motivation comes somewhere from attaining the fruits.
Yes, exactly. That's extrinsic motivation. Exactly. So what Anjana is asking is, should the motivation be intrinsic? Yes, the answer is yes.
And that intrinsic thought should be that not thinking a lot good about ourselves. That should not be intrinsic motivation. Maybe just the intrinsic motivation to offer whatever we are doing to Sri Bhagavan.
Yes. And to say, for example, the motivation should be something like, I should become more sattvic. I should develop jnana. I should become more eligible to develop jnana. My mind should be ready for absorbing that adhyatma jnana when my guru gives that jnana to me. Today, I am not ready. My guru told me to do my duty sincerely for the next 5 years and then come back to him. So I should be, when I next meet my guru, I should be ready with that. That's the motivation of karma yoga. That thinking.
So there was this one word that we have used after saying that would not be feasible in Kali Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga. The prana coming to the head.
Yes, it's not possible. Yes.
That word, can you please explain a bit?
Dharana, Nama Sankirtanam. Yeah. Nama Sankirtanam means the process of chanting Sri Bhagavan's names. It is done either in the form of japa. Japa is the most basic form of Nama Sankirtan. It's considered the greatest form of yajna. Japa yajna. Because Sri Bhagavan says, Yajnanam japa yajñosmi in the Bhagavad-gi. Among all the different types of yajna. Yajna means worship. Among all the different types of yajna, worship, I am japa yajna. Means that is the most supreme form of yajna. Japa. That is sitting with your eyes, forget about eyes closed or open. That's not important. Important thing in japa yajna is to hear the names, hearing the sound of Sri Bhagavan's names. Okay, and that name is given in the form of some mantra, normally. Like, for example, for Dhruva, when Dhruva went to the forest, we heard this story a few sessions back. His guru, okay, who was Dhruva's guru? Narada Rishi, right? Narada gives him a mantra, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. That's given in the Bhagavatam. That mantra is given in the Bhagavatam. So what does Dhruva have to do now? He has to just repeat that. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So he repeats this again and again and hears it with his ears. The focus there is on hearing the name, not on seeing the form of Krishna or something. He doesn't have to, if he wants to, he can also do that. But he doesn't have to necessarily fix a form in front of him and then think of that form. That is additional. Okay, this focusing on the name and chanting is called Nama Sankirtan. That is one form. The other form is singing with instruments in a group. Okay, like we see bhajan. That's what is publicly called as bhajan, right? When we say bhajan, what comes to your mind? People sitting in a group and singing songs, right? So that's another form of Nama Sankirtan.
And meditating on the form, that is also a singing. It was mentioned in one of the
Meditating on the form is smaranam. Smaranam also involves remembering Sri Bhagavan in different ways, remembering his qualities, remembering his activities. Just like today we heard the story of Jada Bharata, right? So that's the process of smaranam. We hear Shravanam and Smaranam. Sankirtana is just hearing about him and talking about him or hearing about him. It's one of the main angas of bhakti, Nama Sankirtana. There are many angas of bhakti. Smaranam is another one. In this chapter, the 8th chapter is about Smaranam, Bhagavad Smaranam, right? Thinking about him at all time, thinking about him at the point of death. That's an anga of bhakti. Thinking about him, reading about him, writing about him. Sarthak is smiling. You have a question? Japa is also one of the angas of bhakti. Yeah.
There are 9.
So most basic, सबका मूल वही, वो मूल अंग वही है, जप करना, भगवान का नाम का जप करना, स्मरण करना. Swapnil.
Yes, so I was just telling that there were 9, sections of bhakti like Smaranam, Shravanam.
Yeah. So Prahlad. Yeah. So
You
when
were telling us one.
So when his father asks him, Prahlad's father, Hiranyakashipu, asks him that, what do you consider as knowledge? What have you learnt from your teachers? He says that, Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnoho, Smaranam Padasevanam, Archanam Vandanam Dasyam, Sakhyam Atma Nivedanam. Iti Pumsarpita Vishno, Bhaktischet Navalakshana, Kriyeta Bhagavati Adha, Tanmanye Adhitam Uttamam. He says, what I consider as my greatest learning, what I consider as my greatest learning ever is this, that a human being should engage in bhakti of 9 types, in 9 forms, or in 9 ways. Shravanam, hearing. Kirtanam is talking or praising or describing Kirtanam. Smaranam is remembering. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Padasevanam. Padasevanam is serving his feet, lotus-like feet, serving his lotus-like feet. Archanam. Archana means the deity. Vigraha, Archa Vigraha. There's so many ways of serving the Archa Vigraha. Puja, making clothes. That's a whole process. Archa Vigraha. Vigraha Seva. Archanam. Vandanam. Vandana means offering your pranam in front of him, falling down, offering obeisance to him. Vandana. Then Dasya. Dasya means visualizing oneself as a menial servant of Bhagavan. Always considering oneself as a menial servant of Bhagavan, that I'm living my life for him. I'm his servant. Dasya. When we say Bhagavan, it includes Guru also. Guru and Bhagavan we consider as one. Dasya, I'm a Das of the Guru. And then Dasyam, Sakhyam. Sakya means considering Bhagavan as one's friend. Sakya. He is my friend. He is my well-wisher, my friend. Sakya. And Atma Nivedanam. Atma Nivedanam means giving oneself completely to Bhagavan. So according to Prahlad, these are the 9 aspects of bhakti that one should practice. This is creator. Creator means one should do this. His recommendation. He's recommending to us. Shravanam. Shravanam is, first one, the very first one. Shravanam. Hearing. Japa is all about Shravanam. The word Shravanam means japa or through singing. Not only through japa, but also if you want. So sometime you do japa, sometime you also sing and hear. Yeah, kirtan, yes. But be careful when you do it in the hostel. There are other people also. They come running, what's happened today?
There are a lot of presents that we have on social media or YouTube. So we are hearing that it will be like a combination of Japan.
Yeah, so hearing, You can play music, yes.
Hearing and as well as it's a kirtan.
Yes. So hearing even somebody who has sung, that's also.
Like the other day you were mentioning Bhagavad-gi.
Yes. Bhajagovindam, Subbulakshmi's tape is there. Yes, hearing that, yes. It's very nice.
I came across a video which had the translation of that as well. It was very
Yes. Bhagavad-gi is my favorite of not favorite, but
Those who are online have not asked anything apart from Nilesh. Arnab,
Yes, Prof.
unmuted yourself. You had something to ask today?
I had just one question, and I myself was trying to think about it. But yeah, any thought would be highly helpful. So with Jada Bharata's incident, one of the things that I can think of is you know where he projects that he is a retard, and that's how he spends a life so that he can successfully achieve his goal of going closer to Lord. So I'm trying to again connect this with the akarma vikarma table that we had previously discussed, and and think about, so if I'm someone who coexists with this person without knowing anything about him, would rather think that he's someone in the akarma loop, right? Like if I ever get to know that he has basically cheated us, I would think very differently than the respect that I currently bear for him, right? Does that make sense? That's how I'm trying to think, how do we differentiate these cases, and how does, like, he remembered his past births, but for us humans, how would uh, I mean, again, probably I shouldn't think in those ways, but I'm trying to think, how can we be more cautious of um the karma that we are supposed to do.
That we are not supposed to do, you mean, vikarma.
Yeah, as in the karma that we're supposed to do, to understand that more, like Bharata understood that my true karma is this, and which is why these other things are all immaterial to me.
Yeah,
So the prioritization became very simple, way simpler for him to stick to that karma. So how can we make those decisions to make those clean cut, dispassionate karma decisions?
for us, because we are now in the Kali Yuga, if we adopt the path of bhakti, it is very simple. We just do our duty, stay away from anything that is unnecessary in the path of duty, and try to regulate our sense of material enjoyment. We sometimes do need to indulge our senses in their objects. We cannot suddenly become a sage overnight. We can't become completely free from the desire to enjoy. But in the path of bhakti, you gradually regulate. As you engage your senses more and more in Bhagavan, you go towards that stage of akarma. Akarma means a stage where there is no papa or punya. Right? Karma is when you do karma, you do get papa and punya. Akarma is when you are free from both papa and punya. You're detached. Mind is in Bhagavan. So in bhakti, by gradual engagement of our mind and senses in Bhagavan, by practicing these 9 limbs of bhakti. Actually, there are many more limbs of bhakti, more finer. These 9 can be broken down into further subcategories. And so there are other texts of bhakti which explain in more detail, more activities of bhakti. But by doing that, eventually one finds that one is not bothered by what is karma, vikarma, karma, because one is always connected to Bhagavan in some way or the other. One can sense that I have done some mistake today, so let me try to avoid that mistake in future. Let me compensate for that mistake. That realization automatically happens in the path of bhakti. As one tries to, because it's a process of continuous introspection, reflection, and rectification. One rectifies one's mistakes. There's a self-correcting loop that starts coming in the path of bhakti. So I'm trying to use management lingo, which you will be able to easily understand.
Yes, no, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Because I think one of the things is, because you were talking about you briefly touched upon varnashram as well. This is very interesting. So a few days back there was this analysis that basically tries to understand the varna. It's loosely based on astrology, but it basically tries to see which varna one falls in, and it's not like you're born in a Brahmin family, so you're Brahmin. So it essentially connects one's atma and things like that, and sees, okay, what was your atma. So the interesting part is, it's actually been shown that people, for instance, who come from a certain varna, are more inclined towards that kind of activities. For instance, for example, so if someone is, let's say, born in Shudra varna, I mean Shudra family or life in this life, but inherently they're a Kshatriya, they would always be inclined towards, let's say, conflicts of certain kinds and resolution, and they gain greater pleasure from winning certain, say situations.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to think that, given that their nature always remains, I'm trying to think how can they utilize this and probably kill two birds with a stone. I'm trying to think if someone can do that. If someone can think of doing that, can they think about that? That, I'm killing two birds with a stone. I'm doing my job, but I would rather take a more, say, conflicting view of things, because fighting is my true right. Again, I'm just taking a stretched example because I myself am a Brahmin Varna, and that's how I'm thinking about it. How should one think about one today? And and if they do think about it, um, how can they make sure that they are not doing something that's harmful to the society?
I think if somebody actually thinks of their Varna today, it may end up confusing them and putting them in a more difficult situation than otherwise. So
Right.
I would advise, if somebody asks me, not to think about Varna at all today, especially if somebody who's serious about spiritual progress should just think about how to best practice spirituality. That's all. Don't think, it doesn't matter whether I'm a Brahmana or a Kshatriya or a Vaishya or a Shudra. It doesn't matter at all. Or maybe I'm not even one of these four. Maybe I'm some Dalit or tribal. It doesn't matter. Nothing matters in front of Bhagwan.
Exactly.
Yeah, in front of Bhagwan, everybody is equal, right?
Yes,
So, yeah,
it's like all these arguments. There are several people who will bring in several aspects, and a lot of time, explaining bhakti to folks is a tough job. So I commend you, Prof, how you do that, because whenever I try to talk about some of these things, there are some of these questions that come, and I'm like, okay, I have no idea how to answer that.
yeah. So tell them this.
So
Because
so
in the
yeah.
Gita, see, this is nothing, it's not my idea, because it's there in the Gita. Mamevamsho jiva loke jiva bhutas sanatana. All the jivatmas are my eternal fragments. They are all my amshas. Amsha means a fragment, right? Amsha.
Mhm.
So all of us, therefore, regardless of what our body is, we're all in one varna, eka varna. We're all in that
Mhm.
one category called Bhagavad-amsha. All of us are Bhagavad-amsha. And not only all of us human beings, but all living beings. That small insect, that tree, that elephant, everything, every living being is nothing but a jivatma, which is an amsha of Bhagavan. So in that sense, all of us are equal. So if that conception is adopted by us, then life becomes very simple, isn't it? With that
Absolutely,
conception, it
absolutely.
becomes very peaceful. Brahmana, he should respect me, or I am a Kshatriya, I should do this. This kind of thinking will
Yeah.
only complicate matters, especially because these varnas don't exist in today's society in the way in which they were existing before, isn't it?
Right, absolutely. And that's the thing. Some people are even inclined to peace more than others, and so it's also, I think, important to understand that piece. That, yeah, I mean, this is my path. I'm trying to pursue bhakti, and that person doesn't have the same priorities. Like, he or she might even pull me out of it and detract me from my goal.
Yeah.
So maybe, so what I'm trying to get at is maybe explaining to everyone is not something that one should take up. But
Absolutely.
makes sense.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Thank you, Arnab. Shall I now go ahead and conclude the class? If there are any further questions after I conclude the class, I can be here for some more time and we can take questions, but the others can leave. Okay. Om Tad Vishno Paramam Padagum Sada Pashyanti Surayah Divi Vachakshuratatam Tad Vipraso Vipanyavo Jagruvagum Sassamindhate Vishno Yat Paramam Padam Paryaptya Anantarayaya Sarvastamoti Uttama Bhavati Sarvasyaptyai Sarvasya Jityai Sarvameva Tena Apnoti Sarvam Jayati. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. Dhanyavadaha. Punarmilamah vayam. Agami Bhanuvasare.